There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. You may be seated. Let me first acknowledge the presence of our guests in the gallery. We really appreciate your being here. I feel highly protected with all the generals up there. The House rules, the debate might get exciting. I just want to say to our guests that according to the rules of the National Assembly, you are not allowed to participate. Participate in a way of clapping hands or taking photos or so. I know sometimes it's difficult to hold yourself when the debate gets exciting, but for the, to make sure that we maintain the decorum of the House, I will really ask you to work with us. I will now ask the Secretary to read the order.
Debate on vote number 19, defense and military veterans.
I'm now going to invite the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans to come and open the debate. The Honorable Mam Kakula. Did I hear some hands clapping up there? There. Soldiers are blocking people outside. Can you check on that?
Oh, I'm here.
Mahlanga.
No jammers, no. Soldiers don't jam. We don't jam things. No, you can't start moving time. No, you have.
I know, Ma'am.
No, please.
It will be rectified.
Okay.
Ma'am, your concern is being attended to.
Thank you.
About the people being blocked outside.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Chairperson. Chairperson, Deputy Minister, Honorable Makbatswe, Cabinet colleagues, Deputy Ministers, Chairperson and members of the Portfolio Committee on Defense and Military Veterans, Co-Chairpersons and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, the Secretary of Defense, the Chief of the South African National Defense Force, the Acting DG of DMV, Chairpersons, CEOs, and heads of all entities of the Ministry of Defense and Military Veterans, distinguished guests, friends, and fellow South Africans. On behalf of the nation, I want to take this opportunity to thank all members of the Defense Force for the manner in which they conducted the funeral services of our stalwarts, Mama Winnie Mandela and Dr. Zola Skweyiya. Last week, the 9th of May, marked 24 years since our mother, Albertina Sisulu, stood on the floor of this house to nominate Nelson Mandela as our country's first democratic elected president. This year, the nation commemorates the centenary of the births of the President Mandela and Mama Sisulu. Accordingly, Madam Speaker, we dedicate this budget vote debate to both these stalwarts and the founding leaders of our democratic dispensation. With us today is Major Sibebatso Block, who was awarded the 2017 United Nations Military Gender Advocate of the Year Award for promoting the principles of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 within a military context. Chair, South African National Defense Force is deeply honored to remember Nelson Mandela as its founding commander-in-chief and continues to be inspired by his values and vision for a defense force that symbolizes unity and serves all our people. The Defense Force is committed to the principles and values enshrined in our Constitution. The Defense Force first policy document, appropriately entitled Defense in a Democracy, was approved by this Parliament. A central principle of our constitutional democracy is the subordination of the military to civil authority. The entrenchment of that principle during Tata's tenure as President of the Republic is one of the many positive legacies he bequeathed on our nation. The democratic South Africa adopted a parliamentary system of government wherein Parliament has legislative authority and the President is both head of state and head of the executive. President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Force, and the Constitution vests in me political responsibility for the defense of South Africa. The Constitution requires me to develop and implement national defense policy and to coordinate the defense function, and I'm accountable to Parliament and the President for this. Our Constitution requires that command of the Defense Force must be exercised in accordance with my directions, which I give under the authority of the President. Secretary of Defense is the head of the Department of Defense and its accounting officer. The department consists of the Defense Secretariat, the Defense Force, and any other auxiliary services which may be established. The defense budget speech is my strategic direction for 2018 medium expenditure framework, and it is to be executed by the department. Chairperson, South Africa is a peaceful country that lives in harmony with its neighbors. However, the unpredictability of the strategic environment, together with the emerging conflict trends on the African continent, requires us to maintain a credible military force as a deterrent. Some of the countries in the SADC are injecting financial resources to build their military capacity through acquisition programs. Conversely, South Africa is on the path of reduced defense expenditure. The Defense Review 2015 warned us, and I quote, "No country can be considered immune from the international acts of terror that are difficult to counter, owing to the international networks involved, and which may be perpetrated by individuals not affiliated to a specific country or group, but to an ideological cause." Close quote. Terrorism poses a real danger to our region. South Africa's constrained ability to effectively manage, monitor, and react to land, air, and maritime threats allows for the continuous inflow of illegal migrants, smuggling of goods, weapons, and human trafficking. These factors contribute to internal instability and lawlessness. The porousness of our borders requires a multi-departmental approach and the cooperation of our neighbors. For instance, the barbaric manner of the recent slaughter in Durban is a concern to our people, and we should note that this is a new phenomenon in South Africa. We must remain vigilant in protecting and securing our airspace and maritime zones. Unmanned aerial vehicles and privately owned small aircrafts are often used to threaten the safety and security of our people. Chair, we are all aware of the growing cyber threat to the Republic and the risk to our sovereignty. It is paramount that efficient, powerful, and cost-effective cyber defense and cybersecurity solutions are implemented to protect the critical information infrastructure. Natural and man-made disasters remain a reality that could have catastrophic consequences for our country. Increased and possibly detrimental global warming is forecast. Chair, both Parliament and Parliament endorsed the South African Defense Review in 2015 as the national policy on defense. We developed the defense plan to arrest the decline, which addressed the first 3 milestones of the Defense Review, and which I presented to the Joint Standing Committee on Defense on the 12th of May 2017. I reported to this House last year that the persistent and continued dramatic downward trend in real terms of the funding allocation to defense has reached a point where the Department of Defense runs the risk of losing more of its essential capabilities in addition to those already lost. Members also recall that last year, I reported that we are endeavoring to develop a common DOD and National Treasury budget proposal endorsed by both ministers that will inform our engagement of the Ministers' Committee on the Budget and Development of 2018 Medium-Term Strategic Framework. We have had ongoing engagements with National Treasury and the Department of Performance and Military and Monitoring over the last year, and we look forward to the DOD and the National Treasury jointly briefing the Joint Standing Committee on Defense on the funding of the implementation of the Defense Review. I must now report to this House that despite these efforts, the defense allocation has not improved. specifically the critical requirement to raise the defense baseline during the MTEF by 18.2 billion rand to implement the defense review has not been realized. This year alone, we have a reduction of 5.8 billion rands and specifically 3.2 billion rands shortfall in the compensation of employees' budget. The reduction translates to an 18 billion rand reduction over the MTEF. This poses serious constraints to defense, and the plan to arrest the defense decline remains unfunded. Defense should remain mandate-driven and not budget-driven, as is currently the case. Not only is the Defense Force expected to defend and protect the Republic, it is expected to rapidly intervene during crises in the continent. It must sustain peace support operations and continuously secure the land borders, the full maritime zone, and the airspace. We also expect the Defense Force to be a key role player in the cyber defense of South Africa and to support other government departments when required. We further expect the Defense Force to execute our many internal obligations. Honorable Member, this level of ambition is not sustainable on the current level of funding. I want to repeat what I said last year. South Africa has now reached the point where it must make a decision on the kind of defense force it wants and what it can afford. In terms of planning, we must assume that defense will remain on this downward funding trajectory for the foreseeable future. Should this be the case, urgent steps will have to be taken to stabilize the department and create a more sustainable defense capability, albeit at a lower level than was envisaged in both the 1998 and the 2015 defense reviews. We must put in place a dramatic measure to ensure that Defense Force can sustainably function within the reduced allocation. I've directed the department to formulate targeted interventions to achieve short-term sustainability. These interventions must ensure the least possible disruption to the fighting units and must enhance the SANDF's operational output. I've also directed the department and the Chief of the South African National Defense Force to follow a soldier-first principle for its members, emphasizing discipline, fitness, training, medical health, and the personal equipment of our individual soldiers. The Defense Force exists to conduct military operations and must ensure that each and every soldier is ready to deploy in military operations as required. In terms of human resources, the budget constraints drive us to consider a reduction of personnel. However, considering operational pressures, the Council on Defense made a decision not to reduce the defense personnel complement. I've directed the department to make personnel interventions focused on the combat units, supported by both a feeder system that will bring in young, fit, and healthy soldiers and an accelerated, attractive retirement program with full benefits beyond that of the current mobility exit mechanism, but without losing critical skills. I've instructed the department to rejuvenate personnel component by maximizing the combat capability of the SANDF by staffing our combat units with existing young, healthy, and fit soldiers. This will improve both the average staffing of units as well as the mean age of these units, ensuring the retention of technical, medical, and other scarce skills, driving career management and succession planning in pursuit of a young, professionalized, and skilled defense force. As the Council on Defense, we've taken a decision to review the effectiveness and the current MEM. I would like to thank the 15,000 Reserve Force members who voluntarily served in the past financial year. The new Reserve Force regulations were gazetted on the 22nd of June 2017. I wish to assure you that the deficiencies and corruption in the current Reserve Force system are being addressed. And I have directed that the whole Reserve Force system must be overhauled. I expect the Reserve Force Council to make inputs in this regard. We will have to prioritize the maintenance of that equipment which is required for priority missions and dispose of legacy and irreparable equipment and ammunition. Notwithstanding the severe fiscal constraints, we must prioritize the acquisition of domain awareness systems in order to deliver more effective operations. In terms of sustainment, I require the department to develop a new supply support system for further operations. An improved value proposition must be created in the procurement process to enhance operational responsiveness and economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. Our facility footprint is one of our most significant cost savers. Our footprint must be rationalized to be in alignment with the priority missions. In addition, we must develop endowment properties and reduce the Department of Defense exposure to high-cost leases. Honorable members will recall that I had previously reflected on the need to sweat our assets as part of the funding model of the implementation of the Defense Review. Our defense endowment properties will occupy a central place in our facility strategy in the years ahead. We must develop a policy and practice notes for the sweating of surplus defense endowment assets and lease our underutilized facilities. I further ordered a forensic investigation into one mill hospital refurbishment program due to the number of years and the cost it has taken for the hospital to be fully refurbished and completed. The Defense Force is currently involved in border safeguarding operations along the Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Swaziland, Lesotho, Namibia, and Botswana borders. The Defense Force's deployment must ensure tremendous successes. However, due to the current budget cut, the rollout from the current 15 sub-units to 22 will probably be delayed. In order to enhance the mobility, quick reaction, and wide coverage of forces deployed along the borders, the Defense Force has procured new troop-packed vehicles that are being rolled out in phases as part of an integrated mobility package on the borderline. 200 of these vehicles have been distributed already and are currently being used in Operation Corona. 50 deployed in the Free State and 25 each for the other 7 provinces which are on the borderline. Chair, the Defense Force will continue to conduct maritime border safeguarding operations under Operation Corona, ensuring joint and multi-agency approach in safeguarding South Africa's maritime zones and providing a secure environment for the accelerated economic growth initiatives of Operation Pakisha Oceans Economy. The South African Navy's visible presence and active patrols has led to the absence of piracy incidents in the Mozambique Channel and the total absence of maritime piracy within South Africa's maritime zones. Chair, in support of our foreign policy and within the mandates provided by the UN and the AU, we've continued to make a meaningful contribution to the security of the continent, creating an environment where political stability, economic development, and educational and technological advancement exists. In pursuit of these objectives, the sons and daughters of this land have at times paid the ultimate price. I would like to inform the House that the South African National Defense Force Brigadier General Patrick Njabulo Dube took over the command of the United Nations Force Intervention Brigade in the DRC during April 2018. But also to inform you that the commander of MONUSCO, the force commander of MONUSCO, who was South Africa's own General Mgwebi, is here with us today and has retired from active force. South Africa supports the United Nations' intentions to downscale MONUSCO. However, in doing so, this should not affect the capacity and capability of the Force Intervention Brigade, which has an enforcement mandate during robust and combat capabilities. The withdrawal of some of these capabilities led to fatal casualties for the Tanzanian contingent of the FIB. We therefore cannot accept that South Africa withdraws its assets, in particular the Roy Falk, which we've been directed to withdraw, which would weaken our combat capability and place our troops at risk. Furthermore, we withdrew our training team in the DRC, namely Team Bulisa, which was established on a bilateral basis in that country. In terms of our SADC commitments and foreign policy objectives, our Commander-in-Chief remains the mediator in Lesotho. South Africa has pledged its support to the SADC police and military operation in Lesotho, SAPMIL. We await further orders from the Commander-in-Chief. Chair, the African Capacity for Immediate Response to Crisis was set up in November 2014. Although established as a temporary measure, it must continue until all of us are confident that the African Standby Force is fully established, organized, operationalized at a continental level. To this effect, South Africa will be the framework nation for ASIRIC in 2020 and will continue to participate as a volunteer nation throughout. The South African National Defense Force, through its humanitarian assistance and disaster relief response operations, has continued to provide support for disaster relief, humanitarian assistance, and search and rescue missions on an ongoing basis. An example was the recent firefighting in the Eastern Cape and Western Cape, building of bridges in rural areas when it is necessary when there are floods, and the South African Military Health Services deployment to the Northwest Province. In support of National Development Plan, and the defense is involved in Operation Pakisa, the local building of 3 patrol vessels and the hydrographic survey vessel for the South African Navy will significantly bolster the national shipbuilding industry. AMSCO has also supported Operation Pakisa through capability technologies at a cost of 6.26 billion rands, in which will create 570 high technical direct jobs and 4,560 indirect jobs over a period of 5 years. Operation Kupatlala is aligned with the country's policy for the agriculture sector. The project is focused on boosting the small-scale and emerging farmers and SMMEs as part of the value chain. This initiative should have a footprint in all rural provinces. We intend to provide greater job prospects for the youth, as well as the reskilling and education of our reserve force members. In this financial year, Defence Force will launch a production brigade. The defense capital requirement is aligned with the Department of Trade and Industry's focus areas, as outlined in the Integrated Policy Action Plan and Research and Development Objectives of the Republic. Members will recall that last year, I reported on the launch of the National Defence Industry Council. Subsequently, the Defence Industry Charter was gazetted in August 2017 for public comment, and the sector has agreed on the set targets. The Charter now awaits a formal launch. A defence industry strategy has been developed, which directs the transformation of the defence industry through the introduction of SMMEs that are supported through government initiatives and nurtured by existing major companies. A defence industry fund will be launched in 2 weeks' time on the 6th of June 2018. AMSCO has continued to execute its mandate within the framework of good governance and fiscal discipline. Between AMSCO and the industry, over 120 science and engineering university bursaries have been awarded to new students this year. Over 130 schools were reached nationally through science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. AMSCO has established a military veterans enterprise development incubator and the enterprise supplier development to ensure that this designated group is supported and included in the defense industry. Chairperson, the Department of Defense welcomed the changes being effected in DINEL, and in particular the appointment of a new board. DINEL's challenges had negatively impacted on the delivery of defense systems and capabilities, making it difficult to spend our special defense account allocation. This has also negatively affected the entire defense industry, and in particular those smaller companies dependent on DINEL's supply chain. As the biggest client of DINEL, DOD requests an urgent intervention by government to develop a rescue plan that ensures the retention of critical sovereign assets, intellectual property, and the critical skills that reside in DINEL. As a result of DINEL's challenges, we've reversed our earlier decision, which I announced here, to transfer the Navy dockyard from AMSCO to DINEL. The 10th Aerospace and Defense Exhibition will be hosted in September here in Pretoria under a theme that celebrates Tata Madiba. I invite honorable members to support our defense industry and visit the AAD 2018 to see the cutting-edge technology developed and manufactured in South Africa and around the world. In my 2017 budget speech, I informed members that we had initiated the development of a multi-purpose logistics support vehicle called Truck Africa under Project Balama. This project has since commenced under the Accelerated Acquisition Program, making use of indigenous local knowledge and expertise. It will be commissioned in phases in 2019. Since 2015 commencement of Project Tusano, in collaboration with the Cuban Armed Forces, 5,601 vehicles have been repaired at a saving cost of 434 million rands. Skills were also transferred to 1,171 members. Chairperson, the UN follows a zero-tolerance policy towards sexual exploitation and abuse cases, committed by peacekeepers, and requires stronger enforcement action against perpetrators. South Africa has come under scrutiny in this regard. Nonetheless, the UN also regards us as the case for best practice in the manner in which we conduct our investigations and prosecutions within the mission areas. I'm, however, concerned that the lenient sentences imposed by our military courts do not act as a deterrence, and this has resulted in strong criticism against South Africa. I've directed the Chief of the Defence Force to issue an instruction on sexual exploitation and abuse in mission areas. If a perpetrator is found guilty, he or she must be dishonorably discharged. Following security breaches in some units, the Defence Force has instituted management interventions to address security at military bases. We need to have a combination of both technology and armed guards. This includes ill discipline and criminal acts, such as the recent incident in Limpopo, where a member of the Defence Force was arrested by the police for criminal activity. Subsequently, honorable members, the member has since been dishonorably discharged from the defense.
Chances of us progressing beyond milestone 1 of Defence Review are diminishing by the day, making the 2015 Defence Review irrelevant, unrealistic, and it must be revised. Minister, despite numerous calls by the DA and National Treasury, nothing has been done to restructure the Defence Force, to reprioritize strategies and spending, including the crafting of an exit mechanism for excess staff. Both the Defence Review and National Treasury demand a cost structure of 40% for HR, 30% for operations, 30% for equipment. At the end of the third quarter of last year, HR spending was at 59%, with an indication of a further overspending to be expected. The average age of defence staff is close to 50 years, and for privates close to 32 years. This is not realistic, largely because of our dependence on infantry units. It fans the perception that the Defence Force is an old boys club and a provider of protected jobs for cronies. Minister, a poor economy and a decreasing budget are our realities, as this department is clearly not a high government priority. The DA believes that we can, however, achieve much more with the current budget through efficient reprioritization, implementation, and management. Treasury will need to agree to a once-off allocation to fund the exit mechanism to reduce HR costs close to 40%. We also need to liquidate non-essential assets, which will release funds to spend on recapitalization of essential assets, primarily in the Air Force, Navy, and the infantry. Our soldiers, as part of MONUSCO and the DRC, deserve more acknowledgement and support. They play a critical role bringing stability and peace, enabling economic development, and ensuring peaceful, free and fair elections in December this year. Minister and General Chowki, the poor logistical support to our soldiers, the poor state and serviceability of our prime mission equipment, inadequate discipline, and the negative perceptions among the UN leadership and MONUSCO donors are all manageable variables that can be changed if the political will exists. The SANDF has a poor record with the UN on the serviceability of our mission equipment. 80% of the UN refund is based on the effectiveness of our Oryx and Rooivalk helicopters, and yet they were able to fly only 34% of the allocated flights in February this year. The reason? Poor maintenance due to unavailability or slow delivery of spare parts. Our involvement with MONUSCO is an opportunity to contribute to a peaceful region and to free and fair elections while gaining critical source of ring-fence revenue if only the Minister and Defence leadership were prepared to take bold decisions. Our reliance on one dilapidated C-130 Hercules is now costing us dearly, as regular flights to replenish supplies, transport equipment, and airlift soldiers are inadequate and deplorable. Minister, the DA's view is that you must do more and prioritize the SANDF's interest. You must adopt a pragmatic diplomacy approach in the best interest of South Africa and a stable region in support of our soldiers and to retain the Rooivalk in the DRC. Urgently restructure the SANDF based on its current and foreseeable role in compliance with Section 200, with a primary focus on land border patrol and protection, sea border patrol and support to our ocean economy, and participation in regional peacekeeping to secure regional political and economic stability. Acquire affordable aircraft for the multi-purpose transport such as the C-130J and the Dornier 328 TP for maritime patrol. Last week alone, 18 Chinese trawlers plus a further 15 vessels with no transponders on were identified on the East Coast, but we had no capacity to react. This is a grave threat to our sovereignty and our economy. Ensure improved logistical service delivery to our soldiers on our land borders and in the DRC. Sell half the Gripens and the VIP fleet, which has been grounded since last year with Inquasi since 2016. Ensure the urgent replacement of Denel in managing the dockyard in order to ensure delivery of the OPVs and IPVs to protect our naval capability. Address the underutilization of Arms Corps to secure economic development in the defense industry. Deal decisively with disciplinary cases, including the sexual exploitation and abuse transgressions and poor discipline and accountability in the SNDF. Just to name 4 cases, General Choki must be held accountable for the deplorable handling and the caring of the horses of our mounted unit at the SA Army Specialized Infantry Capability Unit, which resulted in 25 horses being put out. Major Moshlala has expressed blatant racism on Facebook and only received a slap on the wrist. Despite warnings by the DA and the court findings, the SANDF illegally evicted people from the Marievale military base, many of whom are military veterans and children. What has happened to the transgressors for wasting money and acting unlawfully? Nothing. Nothing has happened to Corporal Marakala, the driver of the chief of the Joint Ops, who misused a defense BMW 540 in a heist activity. Minister, the DA appeals to you to restore discipline in all ranks and units and return to basics. Cut non-essential expenses like Arms Corps' 30% salary increases and entertainment costs to the Cape Town Jazz Festival, hunting trips and non-essential trips abroad. We appeal to you to restructure the Defence Force and reprioritize expenditure with an emphasis on rejuvenating the HR component, focusing on land and sea border patrol and protection and re-equipment of the Air Force, the Navy, and in conclusion, and the infantry. In conclusion, Chairperson, this budget is inadequate for the current structure, is not addressing the challenges, opportunities, and especially our priorities, and is thus bad value for money. South Africa deserves better. I thank you.
Dankie, Akbaralit. Isikhulumi esilandelayo ngumhlonishwa Mhlongo we-EFF.
All winning and stable nations build capabilities of their armed forces during times of peace. It is against this backdrop where defense plays a key role in both national security and industrialization, which in turn creates jobs, thus intervening directly to national stability of the nation. In our situation, we are engaging on debate of the Department of Defense and Military Veterans budget vote without a comprehensive strategic defense review report, which is indicative of lack of vision and leadership at both political and management level of the department. Without a plan, it means we are here to endorse fiscal dumping, which promotes consumption through tenders for family and friends without any form of checks and balances or accountability. In your tenure as a Minister of Defense, Honorable Minister, the Internal Audit Division of Defense has collapsed with an incompetent and unfit Chief Internal Executive. But it is surprising that you still keep such an incompetent Chief Internal Executive, because in the absence of functioning internal audit, it is a free-for-all, and no one is there to raise an alarm about the looting taking place at an industrial scale. The other issue of concern is on outsourced HR services, which ought to be brought under Defense Secretariat for harmonization with DPSA position or regulations. This is a threat to defense on its own as critical personnel information of the members of the Department of Defense may land in the hands of people who in turn may put national security at greater risk, as we have seen with FDA putting our country at a greater risk than ever before. One of the key pillars of EFF is building a state capacity in achieving developmental objective of this great nation and the continent. It is surprising that this department is deliberately weakening engineering division by outsourcing core functions of this division while trainer engineers champ under the sun in Tabanchu playing mrabaraba for the whole day. As EFF, we congratulate Armscor management for remaining honest and true and patriotic to the nation. We call upon the ministers of defense, trade and industry, and state-owned enterprises, as well as the head of state, to intervene in the harmonization of working relations between Armscor, Denel, and DOD for the country to live to its full potential. After all, umsebenzi wenu kuba ngumsindo nje, ngoba vele you are howlers. Empty things make noise. If Denel was performing to its expected capacity, we would not have been held in ransom by unpatriotic people like FDA who brought security of our country to greater risk. We need leadership, Madam Minister, to ensure that Armscor plays a key role in the building of defense capabilities in line with the 20th century demands and at most industrial partner in job creation. On the peace mission, there can be no realization of peace in the continent without this department developing a clear plan which will enhance maximum security of the continent in line with AU objectives. For all this to be achieved, we need a shared vision with member states in the continent, of which South Africa must play a crucial leadership role. I invite you, Honorable Minister, and your colleagues in the executive, and maybe all of us present here today, to go and read with greater understanding speech made by Honorable President Thabo Mbeki in the Nelson Mandela Memorial Lecture at University of Witwatersrand on the 29th of July 2006. I hope this will help us reflect on failures by this government to deal with alarming scales of poverty engulfing the nation, whilst those charged with responsibility to lead are trapped by the demon that President Thabo Mbeki characterized to be whispering in the ears of all members, particularly those emerging from the liberation struggle. That get rich at all costs. We therefore, as FF, reject this budget because we cannot endorse a budget vote without a clear plan of what needs to be done. Thank you.
Sithokoze mhlonishwa. Isikhulumo esilandelayo umhlonishwa inkosi Cebekhulu we-IFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The IFP is pleased with the current state of affairs in our defense. Our ground forces deployed in various peacekeeping zones are commendable. However, not all is too well here at home. Our borders remain poorly protected. The lack of coordination between the Department of Defense, DERCO, Home Affairs, and SAPS leaves much for our borders to become even more vulnerable. All ports of entry need a coordinated strategy in order to ensure that we prevent syndicates from smuggling illicit goods into our country. We must be sending a strong message to criminals out there that South Africa is not open for drugs or any other unlawful activity. Patrolling is not enough. We need stronger intelligence on global syndicates and locals operating with them. Defense is slowly but surely losing control of guarding and patrolling our national key points, businesses and national parks. We need stronger regional cooperation in order to clamp down on criminal activities through and across our borders. In terms of military veterans and lending support to those who have and continue to serve our country, we can do more. Chairperson, the report on this budget states that a total of 15 subunits will be deployed for purposes of border safeguarding, although 22 are required for effective border safeguarding. How can we justify this when full well knowing that we are insufficiently deploying units? We continue to wait for the development of a national cyber warfare strategy and implementation plan, and the establishment of a cyber command center headquarters. This may require many months, possibly years, yet we do not have time to be sitting on our hands as a country. The IFP supports the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now call upon the Deputy Minister of Defense and Military Veterans.
Honorable House Chair, the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, Honorable Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, military veterans present here. The Minister has already rendered all the protocol salutations. Honorable members, this year marks the centenary celebration of the first Commander-in-Chief of Umkhonto weSizwe and the first Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force, the late President Rolihlahla Nelson Mandela. The Department of Military Veterans, in partnership with other departments, plays a greater role and responsibility to ensure preservation and memorialization of this rich legacy of humility, perseverance, dedication, selflessness, and commitment to serve the people of South Africa. We commend the role played by the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development, the Missing Person Task Team in the National Prosecuting Authority, and our department in ensuring that posthumously a decent burial is provided and dignity is restored to our military veterans and their families. Because of this character of President Mandela, I hereby dedicate this budget vote speech to the 17 recently exhumed selfless freedom fighters of Poqo, amongst them who are Vezile Chaka, Lennox Matikani, and Xolisi Damani, who had been hanged and buried as paupers by the heinous apartheid regime. We remember an outstanding son of this country, Solomon Kalushu Mahlangu, who displayed an unwavering and loyal dedication to the cause of freedom. And he said, I quote, "My blood will nourish the tree that will bear the fruits of freedom. Tell my people I love them. They must continue their struggle," close quotes. These words express the transformation displayed in the character of this parliament when it resolved to expropriate land without compensation and put mechanisms towards achieving it. We implore all to follow in the footsteps of giants who dedicated their lives to freedom as military veterans that must inspire current and future generations. We are proud to announce huge improvements made in some benefits and achieving an unqualified audit opinion. The departmental spend increased in 2017-18 and has reached 97% as opposed to the previous financial years. Honorable Chairperson, let us recall that in 2014, when we were politically mandated as the executive to ensure good governance, oversight, and provide leadership, the DMV was providing education support to only 200 military veterans and their dependents. We are proud to announce that there has been an exponential increase in the previous financial year. The department assisted 7,712 eligible military veterans and their dependents with education support. Honorable members, this exponential rise poses greater risk to the financial resource base of the department. However, the department is exploring intergovernmental relations to mitigate this challenge. Amongst us in the gallery, we have 10 graduates, including a military veteran, Mr. Daniel Batches, who just graduated and achieved his master's degree in public administration at the University of Stellenbosch. In the last financial year, this benefit has produced 74 graduates, which includes a medical doctor, Dr. Nogutula Mayaba, currently interning at Ngwelezane Hospital, May our graduates please stand up there in the gallery. Honorable members, this benefit has been allocated 145.2 million in the current financial year. The allocated budget is a far cry to the demand for education support faced by the department. The health of military veterans is paramount to this administration in ensuring that military veterans access and receive dignified medical assistance. In the previous financial year, the department has cumulatively increased access to health services to more than 15,000 military veterans through the South African Military Health Services. In this financial year, the benefit has been allocated 64.3 million, and it is planned to provide access to health care to 17,000 military veterans. Honorable Chair, our country faces the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, and military veterans are part of the hard hit by the effects of these challenges, to a point that some military veterans die as paupers to this day. It was due to this realization that a ministerial intervention established a program which was not part of the listed benefits in the Act. In the previous financial year, the department had assisted 2,832 military veterans with this support at an expenditure of 25.8 million. This financial year, the allocated budget for SRD has been set at 34 million. Honorable Chair, the department continues through burial support to ensure military veterans are given the dignity and honor they deserve after fulfilling a higher calling to the country. The department will, in the current financial year, as part of the Liberation Heritage Route, build memorial sites of the Battle of Motale, Maseru, and Gaborone massacre to ensure that the memorialization of this sacred part of our history is conserved. In pursuance of the Noble Act for restoring dignity to many forgotten military veterans, the department will facilitate the launch of 4 books this year from these illustrious military veterans: Mr. Temba Dlamini's book titled Politics is the Dirty Game, Ambassador Edifunde titled A Man with a Mission, Mr. Dan Mudlule titled The Memos, Mr. Tamimulotsi book titled Unfinished Revolution Memos of an MK Commissar. Honorable members, this benefit of honorary memorialization and burial has been allocated 4.1 million this financial year. Chairperson, there has been very slow progress in the delivery of housing. The department has delivered 238 newly built houses and assisted 104 veterans whose mortgages were in distress to a tune of 13 million. We are currently engaged in talks with the Department of Human Settlements on how to accelerate the rollout of houses to military veterans, as well as looking at other models of delivery where possible. The housing benefit has been allocated 35 million in this financial year. Chairperson, the department is exploring private-public partnership with various entities that will take the empowerment of military veterans to another level. This partnership will see military veterans and their dependents empowered through skills development, training, and business support. The department has set a target of 110 military veteran business entities to be supported for this financial year. The department will work with National Treasury and its central supplier database to ensure that companies of military veterans benefit from their designated status as a priority group in the preferential procurement processes, as was pronounced by the Minister of Finance during the MTEF in 2017. The department is encouraging and giving business to military veterans, and we call on the Department of Defense as a sister department to support businesses of military veterans. This call goes further to all spheres of government in line with IGR framework and the Treasury regulations. We have been constantly engaging provincial and local governments and will enter into written agreements with them to create alternative service delivery models to strengthen service delivery to military veterans. Let us commend the provincial and local governments that have allocated and provided support to the military veterans businesses. The empowerment and skills business has been allocated 50.3 million for this financial year. Honorable members, this 5th democratic government has ensured slow but vibrant growth and change in the lives of military veterans. The department has over time matured and ensured it delivers within its capacity despite the administrative challenges it has had over time. I would like to thank the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans for a consistent visionary leadership and support since I was appointed Deputy Minister. To the leadership and staff of the Department of Military Veterans, thank you for your continued support and hard work that is aimed at uplifting military veterans and their dependents. I would like, in conclusion, to thank my wife and family for the continued support that has enabled me to do my work effectively. Honorable members, I hereby call on you to support this budget vote 19 as presented by the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. We now call upon Honorable Holomis.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and honorable members, the United Democratic Movement supports the budget 19. The South African troops are playing an important role in the peacekeeping missions within our continent. This contribution is a role that the country must continue to play. I am certain that over time, their contribution will make Africa a continent for all its people and the world over. In spite of these efforts, Chairperson, the effectiveness of our soldiers in peacekeeping missions is compromised, and there are grave threats to the success of the mission. The quality of the equipment and other logistical arrangements which are used for a successful mission outcome is of extremely poor quality. These conditions are not an exceptional phenomenon experienced only by soldiers and peacekeeping mission, but as we speak, also those who are deployed to protect our borders. The Defense Force Service Commission, which I am a member of, as well as the Portfolio Committee on Defense, have visited some of these areas, including our internal bases, whereby they have both separately submitted reports to the Minister. However, we are unaware to the extent to which these reports are shared and discussed with the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces and his cabinet. The truth of the matter is that the situation has not changed since the reports were submitted. We are interested to know whether these were ever escalated to the Commander-in-Chief and his cabinet, and if so, what actions have been taken to improve the conditions of our armed forces? Chairperson, according to widely circulated media reports, our troops in the peacekeeping missions are under attack by rebel forces in countries they are deployed. What makes things more concerning is the reported instruction by the UN to the government of South Africa to withdraw the Royfak helicopter unit, which is protecting our troops in the DRC. The Department of Defense, the Defense Service Commission, the Joint Standing Committees on Defense and Intelligence, as together with the International Relations Portfolio Committee, must conduct a detailed assessment of the position of the UN and uncover the origin of the pressure so that the country is able to exercise its sovereignty over the matter. Finally, what must be the guiding principle is that South Africa must at all times act in the best interest of the safety of its troops, no matter where they are deployed. If UN insists, we may have to seriously consider withdrawing our troops, as we are not prepared to expose them to these ruthless rebels. I thank you.
Thank you, General. Thank you, General. Ons roep nou Akbarelet Groenewald.
Voorzitter, I first want to say to the Honourable Minister, you said it's the second year you're talking about the constraints on the budget. Now, I want to say, I'm talking about that for the last 10 years. And the problem is I foresee that there's not a political will from the government to ensure that there's sufficient funds when it comes to defense. We're talking about it. Every year we talk about that. But still, there's no movement from the executive to ensure that we have enough funding. I also want to talk about discipline. And normally I talk about discipline, and I will keep talking about discipline. And why is it important to talk about discipline? Why must we have exceptional discipline in the South African National Defence Force? The reason is that if you're a soldier and you are well disciplined, it shows that you are proud to be a soldier. A proud soldier will always be well disciplined. And that's the essence of discipline. If you look what is happening with discipline in the South African National Defence Force, I ask myself, do we have a proud South African National Defence Force? And if we look at the cases, then it seems no. And then I'm getting worried. U het verwys na die verskillende gevalle. Maar deel van die probleem is juis dat die bevelstruktuur slaag nie daarin om behoorlike dissipline toe te pas nie. Kom ons vat die geval van die berede eenheid van die Suid-Afrikaanse Nasionale Weermag. Ek wil vandag vir u sê, minister, weet u wat gebeur daar? Ek was in die verlede lid van die ou berede sentrum gewees. Die lede kom net in, hulle doen nie hulle werk nie, hulle wil net daar sit, sodat hulle einde van die maand hulle salaris kan ontvang. Dis al. Party van hulle doen selfs nie eers die moeite om te gaan rondstap, om te gaan kyk of al die perde ooit daar is nie. Hulle doen nie die moeite om te kyk of daar genoeg kos is, ons het mos nou die bewyse. Dit beteken dat die bevelstruktuur is laks. En as die bevelstruktuur laks is en ongedisciplineerd is, hoe kan ons verwag dat ons soldate, manne en vroue, goed gedisciplineerd moet wees? U het verwys na die gevalle wat hier spesifiek in terme van misdaad. Kom ek van die een geval wat nou gearresteer is en u het gesê die persoon is nou onmiddellik, oneervol uit die weermag ontslaan. Dis die regte ding wat gedoen moet word. Maar daar dieselfde lid was verlede jaar in 'n insident betrokke waar hy mense van 'n motorfiets probeer afry het en toe die vrou hom konfronteer het, hy haar bloot net geskiet. Gelukkig is hy nie dood nie. Hy het haar geskiet. Ek het met die polisie gepraat en gesê hoekom word die lid nie gearresteer nie. Maar omdat die lid die bestuurder was van 'n generaal in die weermag, het hulle nie die persoon gearresteer nie. As hulle die persoon toe al gearresteer het, dan sou hy die boodskap gekry het. Jy kan nie net doen wat jy wil nie. Die ander geval in terme van die rasisme, ek het met u gepraat, dit is op rekord, die Vryheidsfront Plus gaan daardie soldaat aankla by die gelykheidshof. Ons kan nie in die weermag enige politieke aktiwiteite toelaat nie. Ek is 'n Suid-Afrikaanse burger, ek verwag dat die weermag my soewereiniteit as 'n burger ook moet beskerm. Ek dank u.
Dankie. We now call upon Honorable Skosana.
Ngithokoze sihlalo hloniphekileko. Honorable Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, Honorable Mapisa Nqakula, and all other ministers present, Honorable Deputy Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, Honorable Mapatswe, and other Deputy Ministers present, Honorable members, and our distinguished guest. South Africa's national interest is centered on the advancement of its sovereignty, democracy, national values and freedom, and its political and economical independence. South African national security forces focuses on its sovereignty and other related priorities of territorial integrity, constitutional order, the security and continuance of national institutions, the well-being, prosperity, and upliftment of the people and the growth of the economy. South Africa's national security inextricably hinges on the stability, unity, and prosperity of the Southern African region and the continent in general. Honorable Chair, the Castle of Good Hope remains a center of global significance that is the embodiment of social, cultural, and military heritage and truly accessible to all citizens of South Africa and the world. The Castle Control Board is a service-oriented public entity striving to create an environment where national pride serves to build an internationally known and recognized cultural and heritage brand for Ubuntu, dialogue, nation building, and human rights recognition. Guarantee the development of a smooth, functioning, self-sustaining, much-see iconic visitor and learner destination, optimizes its tourism potential and accessibility to the public, and preserve and protect its cultural and military heritage by elevating it to UNESCO World Heritage status. Honorable members, the Castle Control Board is responsible for the overall management, maintenance, and promotion of the Castle of Good Hope as a heritage site and tourism attraction. In terms of this legislative mandate, the organization is expected to provide a range of public services and goods on behalf of the Department of Defense and military veterans to local community members, military veterans, tourists, learners, students, conservation agencies, exhibitors, performers, cultural organizations, traditional authorities, filming companies, event organizers, military institutions, and the like. The Castle of Good Hope played a major role in supporting efforts by the tourism, conservation, and education industry to deliver to the public. As a bastion of heritage, the castle also played an important role in major military as well as cultural events in close collaboration with stakeholders, including but not limited to the Parliament of the Republic of South Africa and its Portfolio Committee of Defense and Military Veterans. Honorable Chairperson, on the major challenges during the year under review was managing the synchronization of the renovations program with the daily castle programs. Through regular meetings, engagements, and respect for each other's roles and objectives, conflict was kept to a minimal. The movement of precious collections and exhibitions was undertaken with the utmost care and security and cooperation of all involved. The perennial challenge, which is the lack of strong management, should be addressed in this new financial year. With the events, tourism, heritage, and precinct managers in place, the CEO will be freed to focus on significant strategic matters such as UNESCO heritage status, transformation of the fortress in all its dimensions, responsible revenue generation, and the development of world-class visitor experiences. The increased awareness of the castle and the position of the castle as a place of reflection, healing, and nation building placed a greater responsibility on the Castle Control Board to ensure that they manage these demands in a responsible and sensitive way. Honorable members, the Military Ombudsman Office has received more than 500 complaints since it was established in 2012. Military Ombudsman is tasked with the investigating complaints lodged in writing by SANDF forces members regarding conditions of service. Military Ombudsman has a responsibility to harmonize the confluence between military discipline and recourse avenues for complaints and grievances in a manner that is consistent with our democratic establishment. Honorable Chairperson, there's an increase of awareness of the Military Ombuds Office. This is a reflection in the increase in the number of cases investigated by the Ombud. Despite personal constraints, the Ombuds Office has successfully investigated a high number of cases in the previous financial year. Now, as the ANC would like to thank General Matanzima for leading and building the institution, and we wish him well as he retires in 6 months to come. Maybe you can give him a round of applause, honorable members. Honorable Chairperson, the Armaments Corporation of South Africa, SCO Ltd, known as AMSCO, was established in terms of the Armaments Production and Development Act, Act number 57 of 1968, to satisfy the requirements of the South African National Defence Force in respect of defence material. AMSCO differs from other entities in the defence portfolio as it is largely self-funded and profit-driven. Parliamentary oversight of AMSCO thus aims to strike the balance between corporate efficiency, sustainability, and effective service delivery to the SANDF. Honorable members, the projected income for the AMSCO group in 2018-19, which is 1.636 billion rands, and is higher than that which was projected for 2016-17, which was 1.543 billion rands. Given the projected increase in income, AMSCO is expected to accumulate a net surplus of 200,000 rands. This is in line with the projections of the entity to break even for the 2018-19 financial year. The main increase in cost driver for 2018-19 is one, direct personal cost that increases from 1.203 billion rands in 2017-18 financial year to 1.252 billion rands in 2018-19 financial year. And number two, external services that increases from 84.1 million rands in 2017-18 to 128.5 million rands in 2018-19. Honorable Chair, whereas previous years noted the likelihood of all divisions of AMSCO being loss-making, this changed for projections in 2017-18 when it was expected that all components except the dockyard will be profitable. Dockyard is expected to make a loss of 31 million rands in 2018-19. However, the recent appointment of a new manager for the dockyard is a positive step, and we look forward to enhanced service delivery and financial stability at the dockyard in 2018-19 financial year. Honorable members, we encourage AMSCO to work hard with the South African defense industry to unlock future developments and grow the industry to bring about broader economic development in the country. When reviewing the AMSCO expenditure per activity as presented by the National Treasury, overall expenditure increases from 1.905 billion rands in 2017-18 to 2.081 billion rands in 2018-19. Now, this translates to a real percentage increase in expenditure of 3.54%.
Thank you.
The largest increase in expenditure is expected to relate to AMSCO's logistical support. Thanks, Honorable Chair. As the ANC, we support the budget vote.
Thank you. We now call upon Honorable Esso.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The DMV hopes to achieve, that's the Military Veterans Department, level 3 in the impact Is this realistic? Is this achievable? The impact, of course, deals with the strategic leadership, government and accountability, financial management, and HR management. However, there are many high risks that still continue to prevail in this particular department. And I want to deal with some of those issues that will address the issue of achievement and will we achieve the impact level 3. First and foremost, the incompetent and unqualified staff are still within that department. There's supposed to be skills audit done and a gap analysis that remains outstanding. A new organogram had to be approved by DPSA to address those ineffectiveness and inefficiencies within the department, and of course it impacts on systems, framework strategies, memoranda, policies, processes, and all procedures. In fact, the very SWOT analysis submitted in the performance plan is also highly questionable and of course leave much to be desired. The other one, of course, is discrepancies and disparities within the personnel. We have various figures in the E&E, in the budget statement, in the performance plan, and also in the quarterly reports. It can differ from 116 out of 169 or 133 out of 169. Additional staff, likewise, 74, 76, or 109 additional staff, which means that this department effectively can have 242 members of staff, which includes interns, contract workers, and of course also secondments. Yet, and we ask the question, if it's only 169 posts that's required, with a 20%, 26% vacancy rate, but the 82% additional staff on the personnel, the question is, contractors are now appointed, and that budget increases from 35 million to 58.5 million. Other huge increases which needs explanation is catering for 5 million, infrastructure and planning, which increases from 500,000 to 15 million, entertainment 105,000, consumable supplies 3.6 million to 5.9 million, venues and facilities 9 million increases to 10.2. All these increases, money that could also be used if it's not justified for the benefits of military veterans. Honourable Minister, maybe at this juncture we should request, why were movable assets of the DMV attached by the Sheriff of the Court last week? We also want to raise the issue of healthcare, access to healthcare, authorization for healthcare, and also the medication to be provided to military veterans remain a problem. Military pension, non-existent. The SRD, social relief of distress, is still erratic, exposed to fraud and abuse. And those that have been found guilty of abusing the system, what were actually the consequences? Business and skills development, underperformance, service providers lacking, types of training that's being offered, and of course the placement of military vets. Service delivery agencies, SDAs, we find that the policies are outstanding, there's MOUs outstanding, SLLs outstanding, serious risk for the delivery of benefits. It has a direct negative impact on benefits. Yet there's also no M&E, monitoring and evaluation, that is actually lacking or non-existent to ensure that these services are actually delivered by SDAs. The internal audit decreases from 10.8 million to 10.1 million, and it's still undercapacitated, which has a direct negative impact on performance and controls within the department. The database, a credible, competent, verified, accurate database, we're still waiting for 7 years. Data integrity needs to be finalized. The ICT platform, integrated benefits management system is still outstanding. We're waiting for it to be functional, to be networked, and to address the issue of military veterans' details that can stand up to some integrity. The registration process for many a military veteran remains a nightmare. Some of them are still waiting for 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. For years they are waiting, and they don't get any responses from the department. The transport policy, non-existent. We have a policy that is not implemented, a policy that impedes and actually to unlock all opportunities and jobs for military veterans, access to the DMV provincial offices, of which only 3 exist officially. And then, of course, access to hospitals, to clinics, to attend learning institutions, visiting sick and attending funerals of military veterans and family. The education benefit operates still under a non-approved regulation. And of course, In those draft regulations, there's also contradictions because the department's supposed to support only undergraduate studies and not postgraduate studies of MBAs at the expense of all other learners that are waiting in queues to actually get a bursary. This, of course, one benefit is not balanced with the balance of it. It is takes up more than a third of the budget, of entire budget of the department.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
In conclusion,
Thank you.
I just want to raise that the Castle of Good Hope is still under investigation
Thank you,
for
Honourable
alleged
Member.
irregularities, fraud and corruption, and the sustainability plan
time has
is still highly
expired.
questionable. Thank you very much.
We now call upon Honorable Gamede, who will address the House from his bench. Thank you very much. Continue.
Chairperson, thanks very much. I will still address the House from this chair, my own chair. Chair, this is the year of Tata Madiba and Mama Sisulu as we celebrate their centenaries. Secondly, Chair, we declare our support to the people of Palestine. This month also is May, which is an Africa month. We wish to confirm that we remain committed to unity in our diversity in Africa. Ministers, deputy ministers, honorable members, generals, secretaries, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, we as the ANC support this budget. Let me also wish Honorable Tambuza, who's a member of this committee, who's not well, who's hospitalized, and wish her speedy recovery. And we wish also to send our condolences to Honorable Mnisi, who's a member of this committee, who lost her brother. Chairperson, I dedicate my speech today to all the soldiers, all the members of the Defense Force, of the Navy, and of the Air Force, especially all those soldiers deployed in the DRC. As we mentioned that about 6 weeks ago, we were in the DRC, and all over the world. I also bring, Chair, a message from our soldiers that we met in the DRC, who said, and I quote, "Don't embarrass us in our parliament, and don't make a mess and play with the democracy of our country," off quote. I also, Chair, want to honor.
Order, honorable members. We have got a speaker on the podium. Order, honorable members.
I also, Chair, want to honor my late father as an unsung hero. This is what he did in those early years in the 70s. When the townships and all the areas were full of soldiers, when they came running to our home, he closed the gate. And as usual, we all went inside and hid in the wardrobes. When they pushed the gate and wanted to enter, he refused. But then the young boys who were about 21, 22 kicked him and punched him, and he remained half naked. They wanted him to point where the children were. He pointed on the opposite direction. They went with him to the next street. In that way, we were saved. Look today where we are, you and I, in a democratic South Africa. The punches that he endured, the kicks that he got, brought us to where we are today. Chairperson, one day we need to honor all our military veterans, especially those from the non-statutory forces, for their contributions in the democracy we enjoy today. That is why a specific department was established to focus on military veterans. The department has done its best with the resources it has. we now have the following. And before I say that, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, I do have a report of the committee in front of me, which we adopted these days. And want to give you assurance that in the committee, we are not really that partisan because we deal with the matters of the state. But then, and also to say that in our committees, in most cases, we don't have cameras. It's only when we are here in the House that we have cameras. Then we'll hear different stories. This is what the department has managed to do. Bursary education support between 7,000 and 8,000 learners supported for military veterans. Access to health, about 15,000, even though there is a challenge here, which I'll mention later on. There is little movement, however, on the provision of houses, and DMV must move fast with speed. Although on this issue, which we identify, it is because they rely on Departmental of Human Settlement and municipalities. So we need to find common ground on this. They've done some form of socio-economic support to military veterans. The allocation of 627 million for 2018-19 is not and will never be enough to address all these benefits. We also need to have uniformity on education support. Some veterans take their children to public schools, whilst others take them to private schools. Also, not all provinces have military hospitals. Military hospitals are only in Gauteng, Free State, and Western Cape. I want honorable members to underline these provinces and see where we come from, whether we've made changes. Hospitals for military veterans are only available in Gauteng, Free State, and Western Cape. They are not there in the Northern Cape, KZN, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Northwest, and Eastern Cape. This means that military veterans have got to spend more money going to these provinces to get medical assistance. Chairperson, let us appreciate that the DOD has been and is still one of the most stable, patriotic, and dedicated departments. Our soldiers are hardworking, non-partisan, and are committed to the safety of our country. As it has been said, we need 22 companies, we have 15. It is a known fact that the whole of the continent has its hopes in our country, South Africa. Hence, many of our African brothers and sisters leave their countries due to different reasons and come to South Africa. We cannot sacrifice our borders, our security, our economy. More funds need to be allocated to this department. During SONA of 2018 on February 16, President Cyril Ramaphosa said, and I quote, "The defense industry must make inroads in the continent," off quote. As a result, South Africa has acceded to the tripartite free trade area agreement, which brings together SADC, our region, COMESA, and ECOWAS. This will open market access opportunities for South African export products. Thus, our own entity, AMSCO, has got a huge opportunity to grow the economy, create more jobs, and actually lead in South Africa's industrial sector. More especially since our country is involved in many peacekeeping missions. The committee has made the following recommendations. Engagement of the Treasury to revisit funding for DOD so that the department can achieve milestone 1. The DOD to finalize cybersecurity strategy, DOD to review leasing aircraft, as the minister admitted, but rather buy them. DOD to meet with Department of Public Works with security and repairs in all our military bases, including border fences, and finishing of the military 1 hospital. DOD must achieve, this will not be negotiable, the SecDev knows about this. DOD must achieve 100% on the payment of SMMEs within the prescribed 30 days period. We know that as a country and as government, we have not allocated much to the DOD. It currently stands at 0.95 to the country's GDP. Chairperson, as I close, there's one message I will say, but before that, I wish to congratulate all the entities of the DOD for achieving good and clean audit outcomes. That is the Military Ombuds Office, Castle Control Board, and AMSCO. To the Deputy Minister, Comrade KB, a request from the Fihlela family. The family requests that the remains of Stu Fihlela be brought back home from Angola. That is Stu Fihlela, who was known as Dr. Hugo. The message, I say this for record purposes, so that when I get back home, I tell them that I delivered the message. Chairperson, the ANC support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gamede. Let's now give the Honorable Minister an opportunity to close the debate by responding to some of the issues that we have raised. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I want to start by thanking all honorable members who participated in this debate. Not only that, I would also like to thank you, members of the committee, for your constant support by visiting those who are deployed to the Democratic Republic of Congo. You did not just visit those who are deployed for peacekeeping. You've even gone to the extent of visiting those who are in peace enforcement, the FIB. Thank you very much. It is not easy for soldiers who are deployed out of their country, leaving their families behind, and of course being confronted with some of the logistical problems which you have just outlined here. And I want to assure you, honorable members, that these will be attended to. Of course, the matter of the spare parts, I'm aware that there has been a problem of serviceability of the equipment which we've leased out to the United Nations. And this has led to us have to be penalized at times. At times it also takes time to get our money from the UN, but it really has to do in the main with our own internal systems. I submit to that. Honorable Marie, you raised the matter of the MEM. Just to say that we are looking into the matter. In fact, I've said MEM should be suspended. That's military exit mechanism. We should put it on hold and develop a better system which will be more attractive for people to retire, which will have a better package as well. For now, my view is that MEM has been abused at times to marginalize certain people or even to get some people who are still useful out of the system. But also some people who have critical skills which we still need in the Defense Force. Young people take advantage of the MEM and they apply to leave so that they go for greener pastures out in the private sector, and a couple of years later, they want to come back into the Defense Force. On matters of discipline, Honorable Mary, I take full responsibility, but I also want to set the record straight with regards to one, the person you referred to who shot attempted murder, yeah? Who shot a girl last year, which I was not aware until he was arrested this time around. That member has been fired. Not only that, the one who had made a racist statement when a white man had been robbed and there was an attempt to gouge his eye, that one too has been fired. Both of them has been dishonorably discharged from the Defense Force. But I do want to say as well that the matter of SIA cases, as I've indicated earlier on in my budget speech, this has been a big problem. Much as the UN has actually affirmed us in their reports and said we are one country that should be emulated for the manner in which we conduct our investigations and our military tribunals on site. However, the biggest problem now are the penalties which we've been imposing. Very lenient sentences have been passed, and it is for that reason that we've now taken a decision that those who are proven to have abused women in areas of deployment will also form the part of those who will be dishonorably discharged. The matter of Honorable Mhlongo of AMSCO, DOD, Dinel, and Dinel, DOD, AMSCO, just to say that Dinel does not fall under one of our entities of defense. However, if you were to see the minutes of the meetings of the Council on Defense, you will know that this Dinel is our standing item on the agenda, to a point where we've put together a task team of the CEO Dinel, CEO AMSCO, DOD, etc., where we've been dealing with these issues because the challenges of Dinel negatively impact on the work of the Defense Force. So when you say we need to come together, that has been done. We have a standing task team which has been dealing with these issues because Dinel is way behind in terms of schedule of delivery of some of our assets. The internal audit function, I also take full responsibility, Honorable Member. I'm aware of the challenges which currently exist in the internal audit of the Department of Defense, and we are attending to those. General Wolomisa, you raised the matter of the reports of the Defense Force Service Commission, and earlier on I did say that we thank the Defense Force Service Commission for the work it has done and the more than 200 recommendations submitted to us. However, our biggest challenge is the one which I have referred to, and it's quite, everybody is aware of it.
Round
It's
up in
something
1
that
minute.
we've been raising. You actually have helped us compile a document which points to certain issues and which you have submitted to me, which we are going to be with the Commander-in-Chief. In the past, of course, the Commander-in-Chief knows about all problems, not only those relevant to defense, but also those relevant to across the board in the security cluster. As I leave the podium, Honorable Member, I do want to thank the chairperson of the committees. I want to thank the whip of the committee. I also do want to thank all members of the committee for your consistent support once more. Yes, we may have failed you in some areas, but we're trying to do our best with the little which we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, I think from the chair, would like to thank all members that are here, as well as the guests that have graced this occasion. That concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.